I never imagined my life would take such a turn. Standing in the living room of the house I once called home, I felt like a stranger to the person I had become. My heart was heavy, weighed down by the realization that my own family, the people who should have had my back, had secretly turned against me. When I first married Michael, I was the happiest I had ever been. He was everything I had ever dreamed of: kind, ambitious, caring. But as time passed, I began to notice the subtle shifts. At first, I thought it was just the normal challenges any married couple faced, but when his family started getting more involved, I couldn't ignore the growing tension anymore. It all started innocuously enough. Little comments, little criticisms from his mother, Linda. "You really should let Michael take the lead on finances," she'd say. "I've always managed things in the family." She said it with a smile, but it always left me with a sour taste. I would try to brush it off, but it was always there, that constant undercurrent of disapproval. And it wasn't just Linda. His sister Sarah, a woman who I had tried so hard to bond with, began to make little digs too. Comments like, "Don't you think Michael should be focusing on his career instead of worrying about, family stuff?" She would say it with that fake sweetness, as if I should be grateful for the advice. But it wasn't until Michael lost his job that I realized how deep their influence ran. The first few days, I stood by him, trying to help him figure out what came next. But then I noticed something. His family started pulling him aside more often, holding secret conversations, exchanging those knowing glances that told me they were discussing something I wasn't supposed to know about. One evening, Michael came home later than usual. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. It was in that moment that I realized something was wrong. My husband, the man I thought I knew inside and out, was different. "Maybe you were right," he said, barely making eye contact. "Maybe we rushed into this marriage. I don't know if we're a good fit anymore." Those words hit me like a slap to the face. For a moment, I just stood there, speechless. How had we gone from talking about our future to this? The person I loved, the person I thought I could trust with my heart, was now questioning everything. It was as if the life we had built together was nothing more than a mirage. I knew deep down that something wasn't right. This wasn't just about our marriage. This was something far worse. It was his family. They had been working behind my back, whispering into his ear, feeding him doubts. They were the ones who had been subtly tearing us apart. The realization hit me like a wave, and it was almost too much to process. The woman I thought was my ally, his mother, had been undermining me at every turn. And Sarah, his sister, had been playing her part too, egging him on in subtle ways, leading him to question my intentions and our future together. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a concerted effort to break us apart. I couldn't stand by and let them ruin my life. This was the moment I knew I had to act. I wasn't just going to sit there and watch as my marriage fell apart because of their manipulation. I had to fight back. I couldn't just let them have the control. I needed to take the reins of my own life back. But how? How could I confront Michael without making things worse? And how could I expose the truth to him without him doubting my intentions further? I couldn't just rush in and start accusing his family. It would only make things worse. No, I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. So I started watching. I paid closer attention to the small, seemingly insignificant things. The comments, the glances, the way they made Michael feel like he wasn't good enough without their help. I knew I couldn't take any chances now. Every detail mattered. Every conversation. Every action. As I spent more time observing, it became clear that this wasn't just about Michael's job loss. They had been planting seeds of doubt for months, maybe even longer. They had been manipulating him slowly, quietly, until he was the man I had married anymore. He was someone else entirely, and that man wasn't standing by my side. He was listening to them. I began to collect evidence, quietly taking note of everything. I recorded conversations when I could, saved texts and emails that seemed suspicious, and began to chart the patterns of their behavior. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about protecting us, about saving the marriage I believed in. If I could just show Michael the truth, show him how they had been pulling the strings all along, maybe we could fix this. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. And that's when I realized that it wasn't just about saving my marriage, It was about taking back control of my life. I couldn't just rely on Michael's word. I had to fight for the future I deserved, for the future we both deserved. The days after Michael's confession were the hardest of my life. I tried to stay composed, to act like everything was normal, but the tension between us was suffocating. Every time I looked at him, I saw doubt. Every time he looked at me, I saw confusion. I knew it wasn't just the job loss causing this rift. The seeds of doubt had been planted by his family, Linda and Sarah, and now they were bearing fruit. It didn't take long before I realized something that made my stomach turn. The manipulations weren't just whispers anymore. They were full-fledged plans, and they were being executed in front of my eyes. One evening, after another long day of avoiding each other, Michael came home late again. His eyes were bloodshot, his face tight with exhaustion. "I've been thinking," he started, hesitating as if the words weighed heavily on him. "Maybe I should move back in with my parents for a while. They want me to focus on getting back on track, and I think that's a good idea." I felt my heart drop. Move back in with them? This wasn't just a suggestion. This was an ultimatum. The same family who had been poisoning his mind, who had been subtly pushing him away from me, was now trying to separate us physically. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said softly, though every fiber of my being was screaming to confront him. "Michael, your family they've been telling you things, haven't they? You can't let them get into your head." He shook his head, a forced smile barely touching his lips. "They're just trying to help, you know. They want what's best for me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like talking to a stranger. The man I loved was so far gone, so wrapped up in their web of lies, that he couldn't even see it anymore. My blood boiled, but I had to remain calm. This wasn't the time for emotional outbursts. It was the time to take control. The next morning, I woke up early. I knew Michael would be out for the day, and I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't keep waiting for him to see the truth. I had to show him. I had always been a quiet person, keeping my feelings to myself, never wanting to rock the boat. But today, something had shifted inside me. I was no longer going to be passive. I had been pushed to the edge, and I wasn't going to let my life be controlled by anyone, not even my husband. I was going to expose the truth, no matter what it took. I started by going through Michael's phone. It felt like a betrayal, but at this point, I had no other choice. The truth was hiding in plain sight, and I needed to know exactly what had been said, what had been planned behind my back. As I scrolled through the messages, I found it. There it was, a conversation between Michael and his mother. The words jumped out at me. "She's not the right one for you, Michael. You need to focus on your future, not on her. She's holding you back." My stomach twisted. They had been feeding him lies, planting doubts about me. And worse, they had been doing it for so long that he was starting to believe them. It was heartbreaking. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take my marriage from me without a fight. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront them, all of them, and show them exactly who they were dealing with. But I also knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed proof. I needed everything lined up perfectly to make Michael see the truth. So I began to gather everything, screenshots, messages, anything that could expose their manipulation. I would use it all. There would be no more silence, no more pretending like nothing was wrong. That afternoon, I went to Linda's house. I didn't tell Michael where I was going. It was time for me to take control of the situation, to make my move before it was too late. I wasn't sure how the confrontation would go, but I knew it had to happen. Linda greeted me with that same smile that always seemed a little too sweet. But today, I wasn't intimidated. Today, I was ready. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "It's about Michael." She raised an eyebrow, looking genuinely confused. "What about Michael?" I could see it in her eyes. She knew exactly what this was about. She had been playing this game for too long, and now I was going to make sure she knew I wasn't playing along anymore. "I know what you've been doing," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "I know you've been manipulating him, planting doubts in his mind, telling him that I'm not the right person for him. I'm done letting you control our lives." She laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "You're being paranoid. Michael just needs space. You're suffocating him. I stepped forward, my eyes locking with hers. Don't lie to me, Linda. I have the proof. You've been whispering in his ear, poisoning him with your doubts, telling him I'm not enough. But I'm not going to let you ruin our marriage. I'm not going to let you win. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The facade was cracking, and I could see it. She was scared. She knew I had her cornered, and she didn't know what to do next. I'm not going to let this happen, I said, my voice more resolute than ever. Michael may not see it now, but he will. I'll make sure of it. As I turned to leave, I knew this was just the beginning. Linda might have thought she could control my life, but I wasn't going down without a fight. The game had just begun, and I was ready to win. The silence in the house was deafening. Every time I walked past Michael, I felt the weight of his indifference, the invisible wall he had built between us. He was no longer the man I married. He had become a stranger, someone I was desperately trying to reach. But no matter how many times I tried to talk to him, no matter how many tears I shed, he seemed to be slipping further away from me, further into the grasp of his family. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep waiting for him to see what was happening. He was too caught up in their web, too tangled in their lies to recognize the truth. I had to do this myself. If I was going to save my marriage, I had to take matters into my own hands. For days, I did nothing but observe. I watched the way Michael interacted with his family, how they would always pull him aside for private talks, how they would try to make me feel small, insignificant. It wasn't just about the doubts they planted in his mind anymore. It was about control. They wanted control of everything, and they had almost succeeded. But not anymore. I spent hours going through every text, every message, every interaction between Michael and his family. The more I read, the more I realized how deep their manipulation ran. They had been isolating him from me for months. I wasn't just losing my husband, I was losing my place in his life, my role in our future. But I wasn't going to let them have that, not without a fight. It was time to confront Michael again. I couldn't keep waiting for him to come around. I had to make him see what his family was doing, what they had done to us. But I couldn't do it in anger. I couldn't just scream at him and demand that he see it. No, I needed to be strategic. I needed to show him the truth in a way that he couldn't ignore. The night I decided to confront him, I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew it would be painful. But I also knew that if I didn't do it now, I would lose him forever. I waited until he got home, hoping he would be in a more receptive mood. I had already made up my mind. There would be no more hiding, no more pretending everything was fine. I had to speak the truth, and I had to do it now. Michael, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to hear me out. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about your family and what they've been doing to us. He looked at me, his face filled with confusion and frustration. What are you talking about? I don't want to fight with you. I'm not fighting with you, I replied. I'm telling you the truth. I've seen the messages, Michael. I know what they've been saying to you. I know they've been poisoning you against me. They've been planting doubts in your head, making you think I'm the problem, making you think we're not right for each other. He froze, his expression flickering with a mixture of guilt and disbelief. What? No, that's not true. They've just been trying to help me. No, Michael, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. They're not helping you. They're controlling you. They've been feeding you lies, making you doubt everything we've built together. And you've been listening to them instead of listening to me. There was a long silence between us. As if he was processing what I had just said. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the turmoil he was going through. He didn't want to believe it, didn't want to face the truth about his family. But deep down, I knew he could see it now. He could feel it too. I didn't know they were doing that, he said quietly, his voice trembling. I didn't see it. I thought they were just trying to help. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't going to be easy, but I had to push forward. Michael, I need you to understand something. I love you, but I'm not going to keep fighting for our marriage alone. I'm not going to keep letting them control our lives, control us. If you want to make this work, you need to choose. You need to choose me, or you need to choose them. His eyes widened in shock, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of clarity in his expression. "You're right," he said, almost in a whisper. "I've been so caught up in what they were telling me that I didn't see it. I didn't see how much I was losing." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I had been fighting for. "It's not too late, Michael. We can fix this, but you have to make the choice. You have to stand up to them. You can't keep letting them control you, control us." He stood there for a moment, his face a mixture of guilt and realization. Then, to my surprise, he walked over to me and took my hands in his. "I'm sorry, I've been blind, but I'm done listening to them. I want to make this work. I want us to work." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. This was it. This was the turning point. I wasn't just saving my marriage, I was taking back my life. We weren't done yet, but this was the first step, and it felt like a victory. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Michael had promised to stand by me, and though I wanted to believe him, a part of me couldn't shake the fear that his family would once again worm their way back into his life. They had done it before, and there was no telling how far they'd go to get what they wanted. But I couldn't wait anymore. It was time to confront the source of all this manipulation, the people who had tried to tear us apart. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to let them keep playing their games. I wasn't going to let them think they could control me, control Michael, control our marriage. No more silence. No more pretending. I had to take a stand, and I was going to do it right in front of them. It wasn't easy, of course. I knew the risks. The last thing I wanted was to create a scene, to make things worse between Michael and his family. But this was bigger than just us. This was about standing up for what was right. It was about showing them that I wasn't going to let them win. I called Linda first. I had to get her alone, away from Sarah, away from Michael. I knew that if I confronted her in front of everyone, I might not get the answers I needed. I needed to make her see that I knew what they had been doing, that I knew their secret. When she answered the phone, her voice was as sweet as ever. "Hello, darling, how are you?" I couldn't stand the fake warmth in her voice. "We need to talk," I said, my tone direct. "Now." There was a brief pause on the other end, then the voice of my mother-in-law grew more serious. "Of course, what's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I know everything, Linda. I know what you and Sarah have been doing. I know you've been manipulating Michael, poisoning his mind, planting doubts about me. You've been trying to separate us." There was a long silence. For a moment, I wondered if she would deny it, if she would try to make me out to be the crazy one. But when she spoke again, her voice was low, cold even. "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't flinch. I wasn't backing down. "Don't lie to me. I've seen the messages. I've seen how you've been undermining me every chance you get. It's all right there, Linda. You can't hide it anymore." I could feel her stiffen on the other end of the line. I knew she wasn't used to being confronted like this. She thought she could control me, but now I was the one holding the power. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice tight. "I want you to leave us alone," I said, my words firm. "I want you to stop poisoning Michael's mind. I want you to stop trying to break us apart. If you love him like you say you do, you'll let him make his own decisions." For the first time, there was no sweetness in her voice. "You think I've been trying to break you up. You think I've been poisoning his mind. You have no idea what I've been through, what we've been through." I was done listening to her lies. "No more lies, Linda. You've been controlling him for years, and I won't stand for it anymore. If you want to have a relationship with your son, if you want to have any part in our lives, you need to stay out of our marriage. You need to let us be." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then she spoke, her voice low and cold. "You think you can just push me out? You think you can control everything? You have no idea what you're dealing with, but you'll find out soon enough." I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I didn't back down. "I'm not afraid of you, Linda, and I'm not afraid of your threats. We're done. You've been warned." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but it was a start. I had confronted the person who had been orchestrating all the lies, and now I had to do the same with Sarah. She had been just as involved, just as guilty. It didn't take long to find her. I knew exactly where she would be, at the family house. Michael's family always seemed to have their little meetings there, as if it was their personal headquarters. I wasn't going to let her get away with this any longer. I needed to make sure she understood exactly how much damage she had done. I showed up unannounced, walking into the house with the same determination I had felt earlier. Sarah was sitting on the couch, talking on the phone. When she saw me, she froze. I could see the recognition in her eyes. She knew exactly why I was here. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice unwavering. She immediately put down the phone, her expression shifting from casual to defensive. "What's this about?" she asked, clearly trying to keep her cool. "You've been a part of this," I said, walking toward her. "You've been working with Linda to tear us apart. You've been undermining me, planting doubts in Michael's mind, and I'm done with it." She laughed, a hollow sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, so now you think you can control everything. You think you can just come in here and accuse us of everything. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," I said, my voice sharp. "You've been using your family to manipulate Michael. You've been using him to get what you want, and I'm not going to let that happen anymore." Her expression faltered for a second, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're crazy. You've always been crazy. Michael doesn't see it yet, but he will. You've pushed him too far. You've pushed all of us too far." I stepped closer, my gaze never leaving hers. "The only person who's pushed anyone too far is you, Sarah. You've taken advantage of him for too long, and now it's over." The silence between us was thick with tension, but in that moment, I knew I had won. I had confronted them both. I had exposed their lies, their manipulation. They could no longer control Michael, they could no longer control me. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a mixture of triumph and uncertainty. Michael had promised he would stay by my side, but a part of me couldn't fully believe it yet. There were still so many unanswered questions, and so many loose ends to tie up. I knew I couldn't rest until I had taken complete control of this situation. But for now, I was in control. I had confronted Linda, I had exposed Sarah, and Michael had seen through their lies. He was finally waking up to the truth, but I still felt the sting of betrayal. The damage had been done, and though we were working through things, I knew deep down that my marriage wasn't going to be the same. Not after everything that had happened. I could feel their eyes on me now. Linda and Sarah knew I wasn't going to back down. They knew they had underestimated me, but I wasn't done with them. I wasn't going to let them get away with what they had done, not after everything I had been through. I wasn't going to let them think they could walk away without facing consequences. The plan for revenge had been simmering in my mind since I first found out what they had done. I had been patient, but now it was time for action. They had tried to destroy my marriage, they had tried to destroy me, and it was time for me to make sure they never had the chance to do that again. It was time for them to feel the weight of their own lies. I knew that confronting them again would only lead to more drama, more empty threats. No, I needed to hit them where it would hurt the most. Their pride, their reputation, their connections. I had everything I needed. All I had to do was set the pieces in motion. The first move came when I reached out to a business partner of theirs, a man who had been involved in a venture they had been working on for years. This man had been a quiet accomplice to their manipulation. He was in their circle, and if anyone could expose their deceit, it was him. I met with him under the guise of offering a business opportunity. The conversation started innocently enough, but I knew exactly how to steer it. I didn't take long before I dropped the bombshell. "You know," I said casually, "I've been doing some digging. I know about the meetings, I know about the texts, I know how they've been working behind my back." His face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I smiled inwardly. I had him now. "I've seen the documents, I've heard the conversations, I know how they've been manipulating Michael, and I know they've been using your name to gain access to certain resources." His eyes widened. I could tell he was trying to process everything. "You can't prove that," he stammered. "Oh, I can," I said, pulling out a folder. "I've got everything. Emails, recordings, everything they've said to me, everything they've said to Michael. It's all here. And if you want to stay out of this, if you want to avoid becoming part of this mess, you'll help me." He looked at me, weighing his options. but he knew what was at stake. He knew I had the power to destroy his business relationships, to expose his ties to Linda and Sarah. His silence was his acknowledgement. "I can help you," he said quietly, "but you need to understand this is going to get ugly." "I'm ready," I replied, a chill in my voice. "We're going to make sure they know what it feels like to lose everything." The next step was the hardest part of the plan, one that I had been dreading. I had to expose them publicly. I had to make sure that Michael's family understood the consequences of their actions, that everyone in their circle knew what they had been trying to do behind my back. And that meant making sure the truth was out there for all to see. I couldn't just do this halfway. I had to go all in. So I did something they never saw coming. I sent an anonymous email to a local news outlet, one that had covered scandals in the past. The email was detailed. It included copies of the conversations, evidence of their manipulation, and even documents proving their interference in Michael's career. I made sure to include all the details that would make it impossible for them to deny. The story hit the news the very next day. "Scandal rocks prominent family, business ties and manipulative behavior exposed," the headline blared. The article went into painstaking detail about the manipulation, the lies, and the emotional blackmail Linda and Sarah had been pulling on Michael. It painted them as cold, calculating, and deceitful. And just like that, their carefully constructed facade was shattered. I watched as the fallout began. Linda and Sarah were forced to address the accusations, their reputations tarnished. They tried to deny it, of course, but the evidence was there, and the public wasn't buying their lies anymore. Michael saw it all unfold, his family, the people he had trusted, exposed for what they truly were. And as the days passed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. I had taken back control of my life. I had shown them that they couldn't manipulate me anymore. And now, it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. But the revenge didn't stop there. Michael came to me, his face a mixture of anger and regret. "I should have seen it," he said. "I should have realized what they were doing. I'm sorry for everything." I looked at him, my heart heavy but resolute. "It's not just about them anymore, Michael. It's about us. If you want to rebuild, if you want to make this work, you need to stand by me, not by them." And in that moment, I knew that I had not only taken control of my marriage, but I had also set a new course for my life. A course where I was no longer a victim, but the one holding the power. Linda and Sarah thought they could destroy me, but in the end, I was the one who came out on top. Revenge wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. And in the end, I was the one who had won.